You know what hurts the most? It's not betrayal. It's being erased, slowly, quietly, while everyone pretends not to notice. My name is Joan Ashu. I'm 64, and I spent over 3 decades raising 2 children who now act like I never existed. I was the background character in their story until the day I decided to speak up. One viral video later, everything changed. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, keep watching, because this isn't just my story, it's our story, and it starts on the morning of my daughter's graduation, the day I disappeared. Graduation day started the same way every other day had for years, with silence. My apartment in Tucson was still, too still, the kind of quiet that settles into your bones when no one needs you anymore. I made coffee using the French press my son Michael gave me 3 Christmases ago, back when he still called every Sunday. I remember how proud he looked handing me that box, how warm his voice sounded back then. He doesn't call anymore. Now, that gift is just a reminder of how far away he's drifted, even when he's only a few miles across town. That day wasn't about him, though. It was about Christine, my daughter, my PhD-holding, picture-perfect daughter who would walk across a stage that afternoon and officially become Dr. Christine Essu. She'd called me once to let me know the date and time, not to invite me, not to ask if I needed help with parking, just a flat announcement. The call lasted 4 minutes. I remember because I was staring at the microwave clock, watching the seconds tick by, wondering how long my own child could stomach the sound of my voice. I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what a discarded mother wears to her daughter's graduation. Navy blue felt too solemn. The floral print felt dishonest, too cheerful for someone being erased from her own family story. I settled on a grey suit, the one I wore to my own mother's funeral. Fitting, I thought. This felt like another kind of death. I arrived at the auditorium an hour early. Habit, maybe. Or maybe some small pathetic hope that I might still matter enough to be seen. The place was already half full. I scanned the rows, found them immediately, what I'd come to call the royal family. Michael and his wife, Patricia, front row centre, their perfect twin daughters bouncing in their seats. My ex-husband, Robert, sat behind them, his third wife, Cynthia, hanging off his arm like a prize ribbon. They'd made a neat little half-circle of saved seats, marked with graduation programs and handbags. A perfect family portrait, if you cropped out the woman who made it all possible. Not one of them looked back, not one even checked to see if I'd made it. So I found a seat in the last row, right next to the exit. A position I knew well, close enough to witness everything, far enough away to be excluded from the pictures. I sat down, smoothed the fabric of my suit, and braced myself for 2 hours of speeches about family, support, and the bright future ahead. I clapped when Christine's name was called. I watched her wave to the front row, blow a kiss to her father. Her smile was radiant, proud, complete. She never looked toward the back. After the ceremony, I stayed in my seat for a while. People flooded the aisles around me, laughing, hugging, posing for photos. But I stayed put. Part of me thought maybe Christine would look for me in the crowd. Maybe she'd remember I was here, that I mattered. Instead, I watched from a distance as my family, her family, gathered at the front of the auditorium like it was a stage, and they were the stars of the show. The photographer they'd hired moved them into position with practiced ease. "Let's get one with just the parents," I heard him say. Robert and Cynthia stepped forward. Christine wrapped her arm around his waist and leaned into Cynthia, like they'd been mother and daughter all along. Michael and Patricia joined next. The twins scurried into the frame like little magnets. One big, happy, complete family. If you ignored the woman who'd taken out loans, worked double shifts, and held Christine's hand through every heartbreak. That woman was standing in the back row, invisible again. I stood up quietly, ready to leave, when I heard Christine's voice ring out through the acoustics of the mostly empty hall. "Oh, that's my mum," she said. My heart jolted. She'd seen me. She was going to call me over. But then I realized she was pointing at Cynthia, who was applying lipstick in a compact mirror. "Isn't she gorgeous?" Christine continued. "She's been such an amazing stepmother, really stepped up when my biological mother just, you know." She waved her hand vaguely, like she was brushing away a cobweb. "Some people are just better at being grandmothers than mothers, if you know what I mean." Her friends laughed. That polite, uncomfortable laughter people use when they don't quite get the joke, but don't want to ask. One of them, a petite brunette with kind eyes, glanced toward the back of the auditorium. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd notice me, ask who I was. But Christine had already turned away, her voice rising above the noise. "Come on, Dad's taking us all to that new steakhouse, my treat. Well, technically the university's treat, since they're paying me now." More laughter, more plans, none of them included me. I waited until they were gone before walking slowly down the aisle. My footsteps echoed in the quiet, past the crushed programs on the floor, trampled and forgotten. I picked one up, smoothed it out with trembling hands. My daughter's name stood printed in bold type, Dr. Christine Esu, PhD in clinical psychology. The daughter I'd raised to be independent, successful, and proud. Mission accomplished, I supposed. I'd done my job so well that she no longer needed me, not even for basic human decency. I didn't cry on the drive home. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But there's a kind of pain that goes beyond tears, a numb, hollow ache that wraps itself around your ribs and sits there, heavy and still. I drove in silence, the graduation program resting on the passenger seat, like a ghost who couldn't be bothered to say a word. When I got home, I placed it gently on the kitchen table next to the silver bracelet I'd planned to give Christine. A family heirloom. Something with meaning. She never even knew I brought it. I stared at both objects until the sun dipped below the desert horizon, and then I went to bed. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't turn on the TV. I just lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. That night, I made a decision, not the kind that comes with fanfare or fireworks, but the quiet kind, the kind that feels like a door closing deep inside your chest. I was done, but not in the way people expect. I wasn't giving up. I was done waiting. The next morning, I got out of bed with a strange sense of clarity, like a fever had broken in the night. I made my coffee, ate yogurt and berries like I always do, and then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my laptop. I clicked on YouTube. I'd spent years watching videos, recipes, gardening, closet organization, but never once considered making one myself. What would I even say? Who would care? But that morning, I realized something. I had plenty to say, a lifetime's worth. I cleaned my apartment, not because it needed it, but because I needed to move, to think. As I dusted the bookshelf lined with old photo albums no one asked about anymore, I found myself practicing out loud. How do you condense 34 years of single motherhood into a story? How do you explain the slow erosion of being seen? By the afternoon, I knew what I had to do. I set up my laptop on the kitchen table, angled it toward the window for the best light. I hit record. "Hello," I said to my reflection. "My name is Joan, and yesterday was my daughter's graduation day." I told the truth, not the polished version I'd learned to recite at neighborhood potlucks, not the sugar-coated lines I used to use when people asked how my kids were doing. The truth. I talked about the double shifts, the Christmas cards where I'd been replaced, the family vacations I found out about through social media. I talked about what it's like to sit at the back of the room while everyone you love pretends not to see you. And when I finished, I titled the video, What happens when you raise children who don't need you anymore? Then I uploaded it and went to bed. I had no idea what I'd just started. When I woke up the next morning, I had 8:47 notifications. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My phone never buzzed that much, not even on my birthday. But as I scrolled, the reality settled in. Comments, shares, messages. My video had struck a nerve. Hundreds of women, mothers, grandmothers, even stepmothers, had flooded the comment section with stories of their own. I thought I was the only one. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. My grandkids don't even know my name. Some messages were short, some were heartbreaking. All of them echoed the same feeling, invisible. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. By lunchtime, the video had over 30,000 views. By dinner, 50,000. That evening, a message appeared that stopped me cold. Joan, this is Patricia, Michael's wife. We need to talk. I barely had time to process it before my phone rang. Michael. Mom, what the hell did you do? Patricia is crying. The kids are asking questions. You need to take that video down. His voice was tight, panicked, not with concern, but with damage control. How did you find out about it? I asked. Patricia's friend sent it to her. Mom, this is family business. You can't just put our private life on the internet. I almost laughed. Private life? I said. Whose life are we talking about here? Yours or mine? You could have just asked us to save you a seat, Mom. That was the moment I realized how far gone we were. I've been your mother for 36 years, Michael. Should I really have to ask you to acknowledge I exist? He went silent. That's what I thought, I said. Next. Not long after, Christine called. No apology, no softness, just straight to the point. What you did was unforgivable, she said. You embarrassed our family. You made us look like monsters. Did I? Or did I just tell the truth you didn't want anyone to hear? She accused me of being manipulative. I told her I'd spent decades trying not to be, all those years of shrinking myself, biting my tongue, staying quiet so I wouldn't be a burden, and now that I finally said how I felt. Suddenly, I was the villain. You should have come to us first. When, Christine? I asked. During one of our regular heart-to-hearts? During one of those family dinners I'm never invited to? When would have been a good time? She hung up on me, but the video kept growing. By the end of the week, it had passed 100,000 views. Local reporters started calling. A national talk show left a voicemail. But more importantly, the comment section had become something else, a lifeline, a chorus of voices saying, I see you, I believe you, me too. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about my family anymore. This was bigger. This was a movement. 3 weeks after the graduation video went viral, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, a letter on crisp stationery with my daughter's name printed across the top in bold, professional font. Dr. Christine Essu, PhD. It was the kind of letter you'd expect from a therapist, not a daughter. It began, Dear Mother, and right there, I knew this wasn't going to be an apology. Christine didn't reach out to reconnect. She hadn't come to offer understanding or even a conversation. Instead, she'd written to inform me, in clinical language, that the family had discussed my behaviour. And after what she described as careful consideration, they believed I was exhibiting signs of attention-seeking tendencies and emotional manipulation. She even offered to refer me to one of her colleagues, a therapist, she said, who specialised in family systems and boundary restoration. Her signature at the bottom read, Dr. Christine Essu. No love, Christine. No, Mum, I hope you're okay. Just a signature, cold, detached, like a professional evaluating a case file. I sat at my kitchen table holding that letter, reading it over and over, not because I didn't understand it, but because some part of me couldn't believe it was real. After everything I'd given her, After the sleepless nights, the school tuition, the tears, the pride, the sacrifices that stole years from my own life, she sent me a diagnosis, not a call, not a question, a clinical analysis of my pain. I made a video about the letter. Not to shame her, I didn't show the document, didn't read it aloud, but to talk about something deeper. About what happens when pain makes people uncomfortable. About how the truth gets pathologized the moment it threatens someone's image. I spoke calmly, clearly, no anger, just honesty. I said, when someone finally speaks up after being ignored for years, the first reaction is often to label them the problem, to call them dramatic, unstable, dangerous to the peace. But here's what I've learned. Peace built on silence is not peace, it's control. That video hit harder than anything I'd posted before. In just 48 hours, it reached over 100,000 views. The comments section turned into a support group. Women from every corner of the world shared their stories of being called toxic, of being told they were unstable for simply wanting to be treated with kindness. Stories of pain turned into pathology, of love treated like a liability. One woman wrote, "My daughter called me codependent because I cried when she skipped my birthday. I thought I was the only one." She wasn't. None of us were. And as I read every comment, every message, I realized something vital. This wasn't just about my family's rejection. This was about a culture that punishes mothers for wanting to matter. After the diagnosis letter, something shifted, not just in me, but in the people watching. My channel didn't just grow, it evolved. The comments weren't just sympathy anymore. They were stories, thousands of them, mothers left behind, grandparents erased, aunts forgotten, entire branches of family trees quietly snipped off because they no longer fit the narrative. I started making more videos, not just long ones, but short, direct messages. I responded to comments, shared memories, talked about my childhood, the sacrifices I'd made, the quiet ways women like me learned to disappear because we were told that's what love meant. The views kept rising, but that wasn't what mattered. What mattered were the women saying, "You helped me find the words for something I didn't know how to explain." One woman messaged, "I showed your video to my daughter. She didn't say anything, but she stayed for dinner that night instead of leaving right after dessert." Another wrote, "I sent your story to my son. He called me for the first time in 2 years, just to talk." This wasn't just my story anymore. It had become ours, a growing chorus of voices refusing to stay quiet, refusing to stay ashamed. But for all the connection I was building online, the silence from my family at home grew louder. They didn't comment, they didn't message, they didn't call. It wasn't that they were too busy, it was deliberate, a wall. I told myself it didn't matter, but at night, when the comments stopped coming and the apartment settled into its familiar quiet, I would still reach for my phone. Out of habit, out of hope. I'd check for messages that weren't there, scroll through social media looking for any sign that I still existed in their lives. I always came up empty. And then my birthday came. 64 years old, the first birthday in decades without a single call or text from my children. I waited all day, like a teenager waiting to be asked to prom. I watched my phone, refreshed my inbox. Nothing. Instead, I got messages from strangers, dozens of them. "Happy birthday, Joan. You matter. We see you." Some sent cards, some sent flowers. One woman mailed me a handmade bookmark with the word "seen" stitched across it. They were strangers, but they remembered me. They cared, and they showed up. That night, I made a video, not angry, not bitter, just honest. I talked about birthdays, expectations, how we train ourselves to hope for crumbs and then feel foolish when we don't even get those. The video exploded, thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments, because apparently there are millions of us out there, quietly grieving people who are still alive. And that's when the first message came in, from my granddaughter. Her name appeared in my Instagram messages like a whisper from another life. Emma Graybar. I almost didn't believe it. I hadn't seen her in years, maybe 5 minutes here or there, a quick hug at a birthday party before I was ushered out. She was 11 now, old enough to find her own way onto social media, old enough to type a message that stopped me cold. Grandma Joan, Mum and Dad told us not to contact you, but I saw your videos and I don't understand why everyone is so mad. Can you call me? For a moment I couldn't breathe. She still called me Grandma Joan. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Every part of me wanted to call her, to tell her I missed her, to hear her voice and answer every question she had. But I didn't, because I knew if I did, it would only create more chaos, more blame to be thrown at me for crossing lines or manipulating the kids. So I replied carefully, "Hi, sweetheart. I love you very much, but you should listen to your parents. When you're older, if you still want to talk, I'll be here." She sent back a heart emoji and a sad face. That night, I cried, not because I was sad, but because for the first time in so long, I felt remembered. Over the next few weeks, more messages came in. Michael's younger daughter, Lily, sent me a picture of a school project, a family tree. My name was on it. She wrote, "Grandma Joan taught my dad how to ride a bike." I'd forgotten that story. Apparently, Michael hadn't. He must have told it to her once, back when I was still someone they talked about with fondness instead of embarrassment. Even Cynthia's teenage stepchildren, kids I barely knew, reached out. One wrote, "My mum says you're causing drama, but honestly, you seem cool. I never had a grandma like that." They were curious, they had questions, they saw the gap their parents had tried to cover up. And that's when it hit me. In erasing me from their lives, my children had also erased me from their children's lives. The kids hadn't chosen this estrangement. They were just growing up with a mystery woman in old photos and whispered conversations. But now they were old enough to wonder, who is she? Why don't we know her? And they were starting to connect the dots in ways the adults never expected. October brought the first real consequence. Michael's school district, where he was a high school principal, received a few concerned calls from parents who'd seen my videos. They were worried about family values, wondering what kind of man could abandon his own mother so publicly. It didn't affect his job, but it rattled them. That's when Patricia called. No pleasantries, no hello, just, "You need to stop. This has gone too far." Her voice was sharp, exhausted, almost trembling. "You're destroying our family," Patricia said. I stayed calm. I'd learned by now that nothing rattled people more than a woman who refused to unravel on command. "Hello, Patricia," I said softly. "I'm doing well, thank you for asking." "Don't," she snapped. "Just don't. Michael's job is on the line. The girls are asking questions. You're making this impossible." "Impossible for who?" I asked. "Because it hasn't exactly been easy for me either. You all made your choices. I'm just telling the truth. This is our private business. You're airing it for strangers." "I lived it. It's my story. And you didn't seem to care when I was suffering quietly. Why is it only a problem now that people are listening?" Silence. "The girls want to see you," she said finally. "But we can't just go back to how things were." "I don't want to go back," I replied. "I want something real, not crumbs, not silence, not forced smiles at birthday parties where I'm seated like a guest in my own family." "You're twisting everything." "No," I said firmly, "I'm just not sugarcoating it anymore." She hung up, but this time I didn't feel gutted. I didn't spiral. I didn't second-guess myself, because that call told me something important. They were scared of what I might say next, scared that the narrative was no longer under their control. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Thick envelope, heavy paper, letterhead that screamed expensive attorney, Brennan and Associates. Christine and Michael were threatening to sue me for defamation. The legalese was dense, but the message was crystal clear. Stop making videos, stop talking, or we'll drag you into court. I sat at my kitchen table and read the letter 3 times. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. When guilt didn't work, and shame didn't work, and emotional pressure didn't work, of course they reached for the legal hammer. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. So I made another video. I held up the letter, careful not to show the full contents, and looked into the camera. This is a cease and desist letter from my own children. I explained what it meant, what it felt like, to be threatened by the very people I once rocked to sleep, to be treated like a liability instead of a mother. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I told the truth, and the truth hit hard. The video went viral in a way nothing else had. Within 48 hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, even the evening news. Grandma Joan started trending. Strangers called me brave. Law firms reached out, offering pro bono help. Activists and therapists shared my story as a case study. Christine and Michael had tried to silence me. But instead, they'd done the one thing they never imagined. They'd given me a platform. The legal threat disappeared almost as quickly as it came. 2 days after my video went viral, I received a quiet email from the same law firm that had threatened me. Our clients have chosen not to pursue further legal action at this time. No apology, no explanation, just retreat. I made a video about that too. I didn't gloat, I didn't name names, I just talked about fear and how sometimes refusing to be intimidated is all it takes to expose how hollow those threats really are. The comment section exploded again, this time with stories from people who'd been threatened into silence. By family, by employers, by friends. People who'd been told, "You're making a scene," when all they'd done was speak up. But this moment wasn't just about vindication. It was about recognition, because then, Robert called. I hadn't heard his voice in years. Not since Christine's wedding, where he'd seated me at the family table, but beside strangers, while Cynthia sat next to Christine like she was the real mother of the bride. His voice was strained, tentative. "Joan," he said, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I asked. "Because your kids seem to think lawyers should do the talking now." He sighed. "That wasn't my idea. Christine and Michael, they're scared." "Of what? The truth?" "Of you," he said, "of what you'll say next, of how far you'll take this." I almost laughed. I'm a 64-year-old woman with a YouTube channel. What exactly do they think I'm going to do? Start a revolution? Robert paused. "Honestly, I think you already have. Have you ever felt erased by the very people you raised, loved, or supported? Do you know what it's like to give everything and get silence in return? I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. You never know who needs to read it. And if Joan's journey resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. This channel isn't just about one woman's pain. It's about a community of people reclaiming their voices after being silenced for too long. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, you matter.